Welcome back, guys. CDR back again with a movie that I've always loved and I've had such a fixation on as a kid because I grew up with Macaulay Culkin, with Home Alone 1 and 2, obviously, and a couple other movies like Richie Rich. But Macaulay Culkin recently did a video with James Rolfe, Angry Video Game Nerd, where he was a guest on the show on YouTube, and he played the Home Alone the Home Alone licensed games that came out with the first two movies. And for some reason, I just thought I want to watch something Macaulay Culkin with Macaulay Culkin in it. And I didn't get to review the Home Alone movies this year on my channel, and it's more because I just have seen them so many times. I've seen them billions of times. Like, literally, it's one of the first three Home Alone movies are some of the most watched movies I've ever seen. I watch them every year at Christmas, except for this year and I think last year, because I've gotten so tired of watching them, even though I love them. So I wanted to find another Macaulay Culkin movie to watch, and why not go with The Good Son? This is one of those movies that, as a kid, because I loved watching Home Alone 1 and 2, Macaulay Culkin was an interesting person, like, in my childhood, because he was so big during that time. And I heard about this movie, and I remember my mom was telling me about it and saying how it's not the movie you're expecting, and it's not a kid's movie. And watching it, I did realize that's not what it is. And I've seen this a lot of times, and honestly, every time as I watch it, I always enjoy it. And I love the fact now, watching so many different movies, I like the fact that Joseph Rubin directed this, who also directed The Stepfather, the original Stepfather, and Sleeping with the Enemy, which is a Julia Roberts thriller, which actually is really good. I really like that a lot, which I think I'm going to review on this channel as well, because I really enjoy that movie too. And Joseph Rubin is a really great suspense thriller director, where like he always has this fixation on a creepy psychopathic character. Like, for example, The Stepfather, and in Sleeping with the Enemy, it's the husband of Julia Roberts, and in this one, it's Macaulay Culkin as Henry. And I like, too, how this is Macaulay Culkin and Elijah Wood, both really young, and Elijah Wood was in other things before. Like, I think his first movie was Back to the Future 2, like, in that brief moment. But he was in other things, like Radio Flyer and stuff whenever he was a kid. But this is the only one that I've really grown more with than his other movies when he was younger. I've seen more of his movies when he's been an adult than when he was younger, but overall, like, the plot, if anybody doesn't know it, is just that this kid named Mark, Elijah Wood's character, goes to his cousins, to his outer family, while his dad sorts out his mother's death, because Mark's mom dies at the beginning of the movie of cancer. And Mark is taken off to his other family, his cousins, where Henry, Macaulay Culkin's character, is at first seems like this very likable, charming kid, and then you realize that he's a psychopath. And I really think that the plot of this is very simple. It's a very simple plot, but I really liked everything about this movie. Even though it's got some dumb things, like the writing is pretty silly, but I don't care, like, because it's also a nostalgia factor, because I didn't watch this as a kid, but I watched it, I think, as a teenager starting out, and I've watched it so many times since then that this has become really nostalgic for me. And I really like Elijah Wood a lot as Mark. Like, I think it really does show how good of an actor he is in this movie. I like how his character is troubled, and he's made out to look crazy instead of Henry, who's the real crazy kid, and Henry, who is this diabolical, manipulative character. Like, he goes and makes it to where Mark looks like he's doing all these horrible things, and Mark, in a fit of rage over this loss of his mother, is truly grieving and freaking out because all this is happening to him at once. And I really liked how his character changes and builds up from the beginning of the movie to the end. So I really like Mark as a character, and Elijah Wood is really great in this movie. And he was only he's 12 in the movie, but I don't know if he's like 11 or 12 whenever this came out, or whenever he made this, but he's really good, and his performances really does stand out. And Macaulay Culkin is great as Henry, as this character who is, as of this moment, a very different role in terms of his what he did before this. Because his big breakout role was Home Alone, and then after that, he did this. Oh, after Home Alone 2, he did this movie. And he did other things, but the big thing was Home Alone and then this. And he's, like, his performance is good. He's just, I don't know, like, it's hard to explain. Like, he's not bad, but he's just kind of stilted every once in a while. But his character is very scary and manipulative in a way where it really works as the evil kid trope. Like, he really does work in this movie, and he really is truly scary in a lot of aspects. And I really liked Wendy Crewson as the mom. Like, she is really great as well. I love her struggle with loss and keeping Richard's room up, and Henry even exploits that, where, like, he tells them that Mark wants to move into Richard's old room, even though he didn't say that. But Henry's just trying to manipulate everybody and try to wreak havoc. That I like that the mother is struggling through so much as well, and we get enough of her too that it's really interesting with how she lost her son. Like, she lost this I think 1-year-old kid who died in the bathtub, and then you realize that Henry murdered the kid, his own brother. But it really works because of seeing how this character is struggling through this and how Henry is evil and exploiting that, and Mark seeing his own mother through her is really cool. And I love how she eventually has to come to the realization that her son is insane at the end of the movie. But it's great how, like, it builds up to that. And of course, with the writing, I said there were, like, issues where, like, there's obviously things where this character Henry is obviously evil, and, like, they just shrug off little things like he does, like, and they're obvious, and, like, this family just doesn't pay attention, I guess. But they're just not very, they don't pay enough attention, I guess, to this kid and realize that he's an actual, like, literal psychopath. But I liked her character a lot as well. And all the other characters are fine, but these three are the most memorable, and they're obviously the purpose of the movie more than the other characters. But I like the other characters too. And I also love the score. Elmer Bernstein did this as well, and it's really thrilling when it wants to be, and whenever it's sincere and uplifting or bittersweet, it works really well as well, because the way he makes the score, it feels like it's a very mixture of a lot of things. Like, it doesn't ever fully feel like a thriller in terms of the score, but that's not a bad thing, because it does have a lot of intriguing music that cooperates with how these characters are feeling and how they're acting, and I really like that a lot. I think the score is just pretty underrated. Like, I don't think anybody's ever talked about this score, at least from what I've heard who's seen this movie. So I really do love the score as well. And I want to talk about the list of creepy moments to me that actually, watching this, still hold up. Like, watching it, I was like, wow, this actually still works very well. Like, whenever Henry's talking to Mark about, after he sees Richard in the bathtub, and, like, he's talking about how, with Mark's mother being dead, he asked her, did you go and touch her, feel her, was her skin blue? And it's really disturbing, because you can tell, even though he's trying to be subtle with it and easing Mark in, Henry, this character, is insane. And the way he's talking about, like, looking at his dead brother's body that he killed, like, it's really disturbing. It actually works really well, and I really think that it holds up. And the scene where Henry is shoots the dog is really good too, because even though it's got a silly zoom in on the dog before he shoots him, it still works really well. Where, like, all he says after that, all Henry says to Mark is like, I was just trying to scare him. And I don't know, he says it in, like, a smart-ass way where, like, he knows what he's doing. But Mark is not falling for that, and he quickly realizes what it is. And then the scene where you meet Mr. Highway, which is a dummy that Henry makes himself, and him and Mark go out onto a bridge on an interstate, and Henry drops the the dummy onto the ground that looks like a person. So there's a 10-car pileup. And it even says in the news later that nobody was killed, but the thought of the insanity that this insane character is doing to show Mark how crazy he is and to what he's doing to other people is disturbing and really in a really creepy way. And like whenever he tells Mark that he plans to hurt Connie, his sister, who's another Culkin that is in the movie as well. All three of the Culkin siblings, Macaulay Culkin and his sister who plays Connie, and the picture of the baby who played Richard was another Culkin. So I thought that was funny. All three of the Culkin family played characters that are actually brother and sister in this movie. But whenever he implies that he'll hurt Connie, his sister, like, it's really disturbing. And whenever he goes out and he's ice skating with her and he throws her into the thin ice and she gets thrown down there and like she's like in the water because the ice breaks and like he just got his hand out very lightly towards her, but he's not trying to purposely grab her. And then of course people come in and axe the ice and get her out, but Henry was very close to killing her, and it is really intense in that moment as well. And having Mark run behind, like knowing that they're out there, like he goes and chases after her and screams her name, and like he still isn't quick enough to get her, but she still lives and survives. But it's a really harrowing moment where like you think she will die, and I think that it works very well. And also whenever Susan, the mother, finds Richard's bathtub ducky in Henry's creepy shed, is a really great moment, because then Henry walks in and she says like, "Where'd you get this? I looked for this right after Richard died. Why would you keep this from me?" And then Henry very diabolically says to her like, "I wanted to have something to remember Richard by. Can I have it back, please?" And then she says to him, "You can't have it back." And then he just says, "But it's mine." And then she tells him no, and he struggles and grabs it out of her hand and throws it down that well that him and Mark threw the dog in earlier. But that's a really creepy scene, because she finally realizes that he's crazy, and she has to deal with that in a way where she doesn't know what to do. So I love that. And then I love the final act where Mark has been so pushed now to where anything he does, Henry has exploited it to where it looks like Mark is crazy. The exact thing that Henry is, but he is making it look like Mark is crazy because of his loss of his mother. And the final act, I think, is awesome. I think this is a great final act to where the mother goes out, Susan goes out with Henry, and they go take a walk, and Henry finally tells her the truth that like he killed Richard, and it's a scary line where like she says to him, "Henry, be honest with me, tell me the truth. Did you kill Richard?" And then he just looks at her and says, "What if I did?" And it works with Macaulay Culkin's kind of like way of acting, because his acting isn't bad, but it's kind of stilted in a way. But like that line where he says, what if I did?" Like that was really creepy and really disturbing. And then she's like, "We'll get you help," and he's like, "I think you need the help, Mom." And then like he goes and like runs away, and like then he pushes her off the cliff, the famous cliff, where like he throws her off and almost kills her. But then Mark comes in and they have a fight up on top of the cliff on the edge where Susan comes back up. And I love that final moment. And whenever I first saw this, I was just on the edge of my seat. Where they're both on the cliff, Henry and Mark fighting and wrestling, trying to hurt each other. And they're going towards the edge, and Susan finally crawls back up from being thrown off the edge. And then right whenever they're about to fall, she grabs both of them by one arm. And I love the fact that it's so horrible that Henry is again being so manipulative, where he's saying, Mom, I love you, I love you." And then you see Mark is losing his grip with Susan, like he's about to fall, he's about to die, and like Henry's just like, Mom, I need your other hand, Mom, I love you." And I love that moment where she just looks at him and cries and says, "Henry," and like she just lets him go, lets her own son go to let Mark live. And that moment where he falls is so rewarding. And then you even see him on the rocks, and then like he's just dead there, and then the water washes him away. And I never noticed that the first time I saw it, but now on rewatch, like a lot of times, it's funny to see his body just in the rocks and just float away like with the water, like he gets washed away, so he can't come back. And I love that moment where they just both Susan and Mark just hold each other and are finally rid of Henry and realizing what he is and what horrible things he's done. And I really like how the Cliff is like a character in this movie, because it's shown so many times where with the scenes with Susan looking out with the music playing is really good moments, and I like how they don't have any dialogue either. But those moments where Susan's looking out and the camera's passing her, it's really good. It's like it's her thinking on like she's living with this struggle of having her kid gone and dead, and then after she realizes Henry is evil, like she stands out there and just kind of watches the world, watches the skies and the ocean. And it's really beautiful because it doesn't have any lines, and I like moments like that with the cliff, with her and the cliff. And I like how the final moments of the movie is the final climax on the cliff. Like, I love that the cliff was kind of its own character. I really love that, and I just really do love this movie, despite having like little quirks with it that are not like really bad, but they're just, the writing is really weird in this, and Macaulay Culkin is sometimes stilted like with his performance. But this movie does, for nostalgic reasons more, this does have so many thrilling moments in it, so many suspenseful moments, so many creepy moments, and I think that Elijah Wood is really great in this movie. Winnie Crewson is great as well. Macaulay Culkin's good for the most part. And I really think that this has some great cinematic moments in terms of like the cinematography in this is really good in a lot of moments. Using this location in Maine and using the cliff, there's a lot of shots that really feel like they were made by a filmmaker. It didn't feel like it was just haphazardly put together. They put work into some of these shots. And I really like that a lot. It really did bring its own like characteristic to the movie with these shots of these cinematic shots of things happening, and with the score, which is really, really incredible. So I really love the score and the cinematography. And even though it's not the whole movie has fantastic cinematography, but there's a lot of moments that are really moving. So I really like the story, despite silly writing too, overall. So I really do love this movie rewatching it, and I think that it still holds up for me, despite a few little things that bother me, but they're not like things that make this movie awful or bad. I just think that this movie is a really, really entertaining, suspenseful time. Like, I like the characters, I like the story, even though it's kind of not greatly written, but it's okay. And the cinematography is great for the most part, and the score is incredible. And I really like everything about these characters and what they go through. And I really like the performances for the most part. So I really, really enjoyed The Good Son on rewatch. So I'm glad I finally got to talk about this one. And I'm glad I got to rewatch it, because it's been a while since I've seen it. This is just a really fun one. I really enjoy rewatching it. And I really now want to talk about Sleeping with the Enemy, which I think I'll talk about next, which is Joseph Rubin's other thriller that came out like 2 years before this, and this came out right after that. So next, I'll talk about that soon, but tell me down below what you guys think of The Good Son. And also, I did a stream with Derek from Derek's Horror Corner and a lot of other people that are all awesome. So I'm going to put a video link down below of this live stream I did, and it's got issues with it because we kept crashing, so you can at least listen to it, but like the quality is kind of fuzzy just because we had a lot of issues doing it for the first time with 5 people. So this stream that's recorded is kind of messed up, but you can still watch it. You're still able to listen to it and watch it. But just as a forward note, like, it's kind of, there's things that messed up in the video, so like you should still watch the stream I'm in, and I'm gonna put the link down below. And I'll put down the link for everybody else that was in it. So overall, I really did enjoy that stream. So thanks guys so much for watching this review on The Good Son, and check out my stream down below. It's a long one, but you can watch it in increments if you want. So thank you guys so much for watching.